Hello, everyone. My name is Sonam. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to talk to you about how to teach writing with this book called Grace for President. I would like to thank you, first of all, for taking the time out of your day to join me. I'm a teacher, and when I go to professional development, what I struggle with is hearing a lot of philosophy and theory. I would rather walk away with something that I'm able to use tomorrow. So that's what my page is all about, trying to teach people how to use strategies that they can use in their classroom right away. It's the how of teaching. So welcome, and we're going to jump straight into it. So for your upper elementary and middle school students, using Grace for President to teach how to write suspense is a great text. What I do is first I tell my students to take out their writing notebooks. And in their writing notebooks, we have a table of contents. So I'm going to zoom into it here. And the way I like to have students write their table of contents in is with the sentence how. Hold on, this is my first time doing live. Let's see. Okay, so if we are going to add this to our table of contents, the first thing I would have students write is how to create suspense. And the reason I do this is because by the end of the school year, they'll have an entire list of how to create suspense, how to brainstorm ideas, how to write descriptively, how to use a simile, how to use a metaphor. And this becomes sort of like a handbook for them to take with them into their next grades. Okay, so how to create suspense. We're going to talk about a few different strategies on how to build suspense. So when you create suspense, I don't mean something scary. It simply means to slow down the most emotional part of the story. And the reason why I say emotional with students is so that they understand it can be positive and negative. So if you're writing a story where you made the game-winning goal, that's a really emotional story and in a positive way. But if you're writing about maybe the last time you saw a friend, that's emotional in a negative way. In the most emotional part, that's where you need to slow down the story. But students don't often know how to slow it down. So this is what you're going to learn about today. Strategy number 1 for slowing down the most emotional part of the story is to create a time constraint or a countdown. So if I'm writing this, I highly suggest you write this down too. That way you have a ready-to-go list with your students. Creating a time constraint or a countdown is a really great idea for stories that naturally have a time constraint in them, like, again, a sports game, or maybe like a student's taking a spelling bee or something that naturally has that built-in suspenseful time constraint. And you can see that in Grace for President, because here, the story is basically about a girl named Grace who wants to become her class president, and she's competing against a boy named Thomas. And throughout the story, the author creates a constraint of numbers. So here, she's adding up all the numbers. She creates this countdown at the end, right here, where they're almost tied, and the reader is excited to see who's going to win. Is it going to be Grace? Or is it going to be Thomas? So this is a very clear example of creating a countdown or a time constraint or something related to numbers that naturally makes your reader kind of excited and a little stressed about what the outcome is going to be. The second strategy for building suspense is going to be to intensify the main character's emotions. Okay, and the reason this works is because if the main character is worried, then the reader is going to be worried too. So, right here, it says Grace looked at the scoreboard, and she states the score right here, and she's looking really worried right there. Over here, she's looking worried because she's looking at what Thomas is doing, and she's getting worried about whether she's going to be able to win. Right here, she has some inner thinking that says becoming president really wasn't going to be so easy. So when the main character gets worried or gets stressed or sweat drips down their face, then those are different strategies for making the reader feel that suspense as well. The third strategy for developing suspense is to intensify the secondary character's emotions. And Grace for President shows that example at the very end. So let's write that down. Intensify the secondary character's emotions. Okay, so this essentially means that the other characters have to freak out. So let's look at how that happens in the book. Okay, on this page, at the very end, the character's emotions are getting intense. Again, intense doesn't necessarily mean negative. It could mean positive. So here, Thomas is grinning. So you can tell he thinks he's going to win. So he's just getting so confident about it. Grace feels sick. See, having that positive grinning right up against that negative sick gives you this positive negative contrast, which again uses intensity to make us feel kind of conflicted inside. Then Sam walks up and he doesn't say anything. Thomas whispers. He went from grinning to whispering. And Sam cleared his throat, and then here the gymnasium erupted into loud cheers. So you see that the gymnasium, like the rest of the students here, Thomas, Grace, Sam, the author is showing how all of them have these intense emotions. So if you insert that in the most emotional part of your story, it's going to build the suspense. And you do that by simply describing what each character is doing or the facial expression that they have. We're on number 4. The fourth strategy for building suspense is to do something called raising the stakes. Okay. And if you like this so far, I welcome you to follow my page because, again, everything I put out there, I hope for you to be able to use immediately. That's my goal. Practical writing and reading tips. So the fourth strategy for building suspense is called raising the stakes. That basically means that your main character has to achieve what they want. Otherwise, the world feels like it's going to end. It's a really big deal for the main character to achieve something. So it's almost like, okay, say I'm writing a story and it's a story about a girl who wins this dance championship. And she has to win it because her mom won it and her grandmother won it before her. And so there's like this family legacy she has to keep up. That is what raising the stakes means. So in Grace for President, an example of raising the stakes is here. So Miss Barrington says, the truth is our country has never had a woman president. So first of all, if Grace wins, she kind of sets the standard for her class as like being the first woman president. So she's sitting there thinking about how important that is. No, girls? That's crazy. And so she's feeling like this almost this responsibility that she's got to win. And then over here, she's thinking about all of these accomplishments that Thomas has. Again, he's her opponent. I'm not going to read the story to you. It's very easy to find on YouTube for yourself. But you'll see that Thomas is her opponent, and she's stressed out because he's a champion at a lot of things. He's good at a lot of different things. So in that way, sorry, I keep touching the screen. In that way, the stakes are being raised. Like, oh my gosh, if she wins, she's going to be the first girl president. Oh my gosh, if she wins, she's going to beat this guy who apparently has so many accomplishments. And then over here, you can see that Grace is talking to kids while she's campaigning for herself. And then it says she's campaigning. At recess, she's spending her time giving speeches. During lunch, she's handing out cupcakes. She's holding rallies. And at the same time, Thomas is just doing his own thing. He's studying his spelling words, doing his science experiments, playing his soccer. That raises the stakes too, because she's putting in all this work. And if she doesn't get it, and he did nothing and he wins, how terrible is that going to feel? So basically, raising the stakes just means make that goal even more important to achieve, even if you have to use poetic license to get it. The fifth strategy for building suspense is going to be to use the character's inner thinking. Now, using the character's inner thinking builds suspense because if the main character is feeling a certain way and the book is from their perspective, then the reader will also feel that way. In Grace for President, Grace has some inner thinking right here. In fact, the illustrator also brings that inner thinking out right here. She's literally thinking. Here's a thought bubble. And she's thinking, oh my goodness. Grace's heart sank. Thomas is this. He's the captain of this. Oh my gosh, it's not going to be so easy to be president after all. Putting this inner thinking here shows that Grace is really worried about whether she's going to win class president, and she's kind of stressed about it. And that automatically will make the reader feel that way too. So providing a little bit of insight into what the main character is thinking is another strategy for developing the suspense. All right, please go ahead and put a smiley of what you're feeling about these strategies if you feel like you'll be able to use them, or leave a comment here to help us understand how you're feeling about these strategies. And the sixth strategy for coming up with suspense is my favorite one. It's called writing words in their own paragraphs, or writing short sentences. Okay, this strategy is very visual, and you'll see it in a second. So when you write words in their own paragraph, it actually makes the reader's eyes jump. And again, this is a fantastic example of that. You don't even have to read this page. You can just look at it and see, okay, we've got sentences that are on their own lines. These are each their own little paragraph. The author hasn't squished it together. These sentences are together, but these are all separated. And what that does is you read here, you naturally pause, your eyes have to move here, and you pause, and then you read, and then you pause, and then you read. And that pause and start and go and start and go, all of that creates that suspense as well. I'll read it to you and you'll feel it. Thomas grinned. Grace felt sick. Sam walked up to the microphone. He looked at Thomas. He looked at Grace. He looked down at Grace's handmade flag. Sam didn't say a word. What are you waiting for? Thomas whispered. The band stopped playing. All eyes were on Wyoming. And finally, Sam cleared his throat. So you can see how having each sentence by itself makes a huge impact on how this is even being read. It makes that impact whether you're reading it aloud. It makes that impact whether you are reading it in your mind. So that is a great strategy. And my students love doing it because usually they'll have like all this squished together in their story, and all they have to do is click enter, and suddenly, oh my gosh, there's the suspense. I'm going to show you an example of that. So those are the 6 examples. So when I taught middle school, I had an hour to teach language arts. I would not teach all of these in one setting. I know you and I got through it in about 10, 15 minutes, but that wouldn't happen in the classroom. I wouldn't want to confuse kids. So I would maybe do number 1 and number 2 in one day and have them practice it and so on and so forth. I would take some time here because building the suspense is what makes the story, really pop. Here's an example. I would write this with my students. So winning a game seems to be a popular personal narrative story that students come up with. Winning a game or like achieving something. So the moment you are about to achieve it is where you're going to insert the suspense. Without even reading what I wrote, you can tell that I have used the strategy of writing words in their own paragraph. without even reading it. You can tell that I have done that because I've got all these sentences sitting there on their own. And without reading it, you can also tell I have inserted the strategy of a countdown. Right here, creating a time constraint or a countdown. And you see that right here, 10 seconds, 6 seconds, 2 seconds, and then the whatever you call it. I'm not really a sports person. The countdown, the timer, the scoreboard, it goes bzzz and the game is over. So there you can tell I have the countdown. I'm going to speed read this to you like I do with my students sometimes. Okay. My hands gripped the ball tightly and sweat dripped down my face. I glanced to the right and saw the countdown, 10 seconds. I dribbled left, then right, skirting through the opposition, 6 seconds. My coach yelled, but I didn't know what she said. I had one job. It was all on me. 2 seconds. I didn't have time. I raised the ball, took a deep breath, and released. The ball soared. Swish. Bzz. The game was over. I did it. So you can see here that while it is suspenseful, it's kind of quiet. Like you'll notice no one's speaking. It's all in my head, and I can leave that there. But I'm noticing that one of the strategies for developing suspense is to intensify the secondary character's emotions. And there was a secondary character in here that I mentioned, the coach. And I said the coach yelled, but I didn't actually show the yelling here. So if I was doing a conference with a student, I would say, okay, so my coach yelled. This could be an easy place for you to put in what the coach actually said. So if you have an idea of what I could make my coach say, go ahead and comment it, and I'll see if I can find it. I'm not sure. This is my first live, and I'm not sure where I can see people's comments. If you have something that I can say for the coach yelling, go ahead and comment it, and maybe we can decide together what the coach is going to yell. And what I tell my students is like, okay, my students often say, well, my coach didn't actually yell at me. Like, I don't remember what happened in that moment. And I said, well, this is where it's okay to kind of basically lie about it. You have a little bit of poetic license. You want to get through the emotion and the suspense. So what would a coach yell? That's what we have to figure out. Maybe here the coach could say, pass the ball right now. And maybe I could even add in a little bit of description, like the coach balls her fists, or she like stamps her foot or something to show that she's really, really irritated that I'm not following her coaching directions from the side. And that would be a great addition to our building suspense list of intensifying the secondary character's emotions. Another easy way I could intensify this moment is by including the audience's reaction. Like maybe as the scoreboard is counting down, I can also have the audience like in the bleachers, and they're like standing up or they're gasping. So I can add the audience experience over here. And if I wanted to include raising the stakes, right, raising the stakes, maybe in this story, I can write about how, I don't know, maybe my dad is in the bleachers and he's staring at me because he went to this school and he won this game. So, oh my gosh, if I don't win, like what kind of failure am I? Or maybe I have won every single game and this is like the last and final time. And if I don't win, my teammates are going to think I'm a terrible player. Or maybe we have never won. And I have never had the chance to play, and this is my first chance because the main player got injured or something. It's my time to prove myself. There are so many ways that I can raise the stakes, but that does require a little bit of backstory. Okay. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know. I hope this page specifically helps you in teaching your students how to build that suspense instead of just telling them, slow down the moment, slow down the moment. I hope that these tips help them figure out how to actually slow down the moment. And I recommend Grace for President as a mentor text for that because it has all of these examples in it. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. I hope that was quick and gave you some useful advice and that you can take it and use it immediately next year. And if you're a teacher, I hope you get some time off this summer and you have some time to think creatively, because I know I'm always feeling like I'm surviving during the school year, and then over the summer, I finally have some time to think. So thank you so much, and please like my page and like this live. I don't know if that's a thing. Follow my page, and I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much, and have a great day.